Today, I spoke with economist Jim Rickards about financial warfare and the impact of Iraq's instability on the oil markets. Now, his latest book, The Death of Money, looks at the various threats to the international monetary system. So we asked him what financial warfare is and what impact it could have on the international monetary system. Here's what he had to say.
Financial warfare is part of what strategists call asymmetric or unrestricted warfare. So it's everything other than conventional kinetic weapons. So no bombs, planes, submarines. There are a lot of things in asymmetric warfare, including cyber warfare, weapons of mass destruction. But financial warfare is basically using capital markets, so stocks, bonds, derivatives, commodities, foreign exchange, all the things that the viewers are familiar with, as weapons to try to diminish the power of your opponents and enhance your own power. This is going on right now between Russia and the United States around Ukraine. Again, no one thinks that we're going to invade Ukraine. There's no support for that, but putting on sanctions, freezing assets, and there's been a financial warfare. There's been financial warfare between the U.S. and Iran for years. Now, it's in a kind of truce right now. Last December, the president announced a kind of détente with Iran in their nuclear negotiations and some other points of contact. Actually, that détente that we're trying to expand it right now around the crisis in Iraq, try to enlist Iranian aid, or maybe Iran and U.S. work together to suppress what's going on there. But so that financial warfare, that financial war is sort of in a truce right now. But the financial war with Russia is alive and well. That's probably going to get worse because I don't think Putin's finished with Ukraine. So basically using things we're all familiar with, capital markets, to hurt your enemies.
Now, sectarian strife in Iraq has put the growth of OPEC crude oil production at risk over the next 5 years. So how do you think this conflict will impact the oil markets?
Well, the oil price is going to go up. This conflict is nowhere near resolution. It's a very complicated chessboard, as you know, Aaron. It's not just ISIS, that's the al-Qaeda offshoot, the Sunni Muslim extremists who seem to be sweeping the board in northern Iraq. And of course, Iran has now come in from the south to protect its interests. They don't really want to, but they have to. The Turks are very concerned because Kurdistan seems to be declaring an independent Kurdish republic. Turkey didn't mind helping Kurdistan achieve autonomy within Iraq, but they certainly don't want an independent Kurdistan. That seems to be happening. Jordan is in the crosshairs. ISIS may go there next. But behind the scenes, what's going on kind of at a higher level is that Russia and Saudi Arabia are financing and promoting the ISIS advance. And it's not just these terrorists. There are a lot of former Ba'athist members. There are a lot of Sunni members of Saddam Hussein's former army, the so-called awakening councils, the tribal chiefs. These are Sunnis who are not Muslim extremists, but they do want to topple the Shiite government. So there's an alliance of convenience, and a lot of it's being financed by Saudi Arabia at the moment, also designed to break up the emerging détente between the U.S. and Iran. And this has been going on for a while, and you mentioned this, and American people just roll their eyes like, wait a second, we thought Iran was the enemy. They call us the great Satan. What's going on here? Well, the answer is that, since last year and for a couple of years of private talks before that, Obama has been, playing footsie with the Iranians, and we've really anointed them as a regional hegemonic power and green-lighted their nuclear ambitions. So that's a stab in the back to Saudi Arabia. So you got the Saudis and the Russians using ISIS sort of as pawns, along with former elements of Saddam's army, squaring off against Sunnis backed by Iran, and the U.S. is trying to get on the Iranian side. So it's a very complicated chessboard. But the bottom line for markets is it's complicated. It's not going to be over soon. It's going to get worse. It's going to regionalize, and that means oil prices are going a lot higher.
What about this escalating violence? How does it play out in the future markets? Obviously, there's going to be a lot of volatility, but what would be your bet right now?
Well, again, this will show up in futures markets, higher oil, and I expect higher gold. One of the things that concerns me a little bit, Aaron, is we seem to be living in a world of 2-second attention spans. I look at market professionals in the U.S., and, 3 months ago, everyone was worried about Ukraine, and, kind of gold went up a little bit on a fear trade, and there was some volatility. And then, there was a little bit of pushback with the sanctions. They weren't too extreme, but Putin, who was not just a good chess player, he's a good, sort of kung fu judo expert. He was smart enough to back off a little bit. He said, I pushed until I got some pushback. When the pushback came, he backed off, and everyone in New York said, oh, great, Ukraine's over, on to the next trade. Well, Ukraine wasn't over. It's not over. Putin is now moving in. He's rolling tanks in eastern Ukraine. They shut down this. I'm not saying Putin sat there with a grenade launcher, but obviously he has the ability to influence what's going on there. And I heard reports, I haven't seen them confirmed, but I did have some good sourcing on reports that sadly some Russian journalists were killed in Ukraine today. And if that's true, that gives, Putin has often said, I don't want to invade your country, but I will go protect Russians. Well, that's what's called a casus belli, or a reason for war. Not that Putin needs one, but so he might come back into Ukraine. Also, he's assessing that the White House really can't walk and chew gum at the same time. If we're distracted with Iraq, what better time for him to go into Ukraine? And he's the one stirring the pot in Iraq along with the Saudis. So as I say, you got to work this problem at many dimensions. But the bottom line for markets is that there's this outtrade between complacency on the one hand and a very tumultuous world that's probably going to get worse and more dangerous on the other. That's going to break. My guess is that will break in favor of higher prices, higher inflation, higher oil, and higher gold. It kind of reminds me of the 1970s. It was the Fed had easy money in 71, 72 to promote Nixon's reelection, and we didn't get a lot of inflation at the time, but then there was a geopolitical spark in 1973 with the Yom Kippur War, and then inflation just ran away. We had 50%, 5-0 inflation between 1977 and 1981. So what's going on in the Middle East now and Ukraine could be that kind of geopolitical spark on top of all this, dry kindling or wood that the Fed has printed. People have been surprised, well, how could you print $4 trillion, which the Fed has done, and not get inflation? Well, the answer is that printing the money is only half the equation. You need a spark or catalyst or a change in behavior to increase the velocity of money. And you can wait a long time for the spark, but this may be it.
Now, as the situation begins to unravel, it points to the question of why we got involved in the first place. Now, the markets are already feeling the pain as several international refineries in northern Iraq have evacuated personnel. And Ron Paul, an outspoken critic of intervention abroad, has said, quote, "Because of the government's foolish policy of foreign interventionism, the U.S. is faced with two equally stupid choices. Either pour in resources to prop up an Iraqi government that is a close ally with Iran, or throw our support in with al-Qaeda in Iraq, as we have done in Syria. I say we must follow a third choice, ally with the American people, and spend not one more dollar or one more life attempting to remake the Middle East." Now, Ron Paul isn't alone in his criticism either. Back in 2003, millions and millions of people took to the streets around the world in protest of the Iraq war. But as always, we'll be keeping a close eye on how this story shakes out and keeping you updated on the market's reactions. Time now for a quick break, but